rocket red glare, reppin' USA, so she go crazy. Mom's bursting in there with the rocket red glare, reppin' USA, so she go crazy. Wait for it, 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 hey!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Latino Free Minds. I am your host, Gio. I am here with my co-host, Christian. Christian, how you doing?
How's it going, Gio? Real good, good. All good here.
Well, I'm good too. And today is a special day. We normally don't have a guest on Tuesdays, but we have somebody that is very well respected throughout California and in law enforcement across the entire country. We have somebody that was once in charge down there in the city of, or the county of Los Angeles, and has the backing of many. I'm just to tell you, when I talk to deputies down there, he's got all their respect. All right, he had their back. And not only that, he had the back of folks in his county. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm very excited to welcome to Latino Free Minds, Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Sheriff, how you doing?
Not too bad. How you guys doing?
I'm doing amazing.
Doing good.
Very excited to have you here today. I keep saying that, but like I said it in the intro. A lot of the there's not a single one deputy that I've talked to, not just deputies, but even LAPD. I've talked to folks in Ventura County, just all around, and everybody they love you. So I want to find out why, and I want to find out what it's going to take to get you back into the position of sheriff of Los Angeles County. So let's start out with who you are. Who is Sheriff Alex Villanueva?
Well, just Alex Villanueva. I'm born in Chicago, raised in upstate New York and the island of Puerto Rico. My dad was Puerto Rican, born and raised on the island. So I lived my youth on the island. At the age of 19, I joined the U.S. Air Force. Got my 20th birthday in Air Force basic training. Yeah, they didn't sing me happy birthday either. And then literally roll of the dice. Going from Puerto Rico, there was a lot of cold places the Air Force had stations, and I did not want mine at North Dakota or some weird place like that, or Alaska. So wait a minute. There's Florida, Texas, and California. That's about as warm as it gets for the lower 48. So I put down those three, rolled the dice, and out came California, and here I am.
Well, welcome to California. Now you've been here for a long time, right?
Yeah, that was 1983 that I wound up here, and
Wow.
I've been here since. And that's my faithful companion, Simon, the lovable bag of fleas. He's always wanting to bark at something.
Well, Simon's welcome to grab a microphone too. Bring him in.
Oh yeah.
A dog will snitch on you.
Oh yeah, that they will.
All dogs go to heaven.
So, how did you get your career started in law enforcement?
Well, I left active duty Air Force to go back to school because I figured I got to finish school. Otherwise, I would be pumping gas on jets on the flight line. You know, that I thought that was not a future for me. So went back to school, and then when I was in school and I was trying to make ends meet, I kept seeing these buses go by that had a sign that said, "Dull jobs are a crime. Fight crime. Be an LA deputy sheriff." This is the summer of '85 when the Night Stalker was running rampant in LA County.
I remember that.
So, having my career in the military, Air Guard, Army National Guard, and the Air Force, I said, you know what? I can do that. I kind of like the public sector, public service, and uniform. So count me in. And That was in 1986 when I got hired on, and it was 2018, 32 years later, that I got elected as sheriff, the 33rd sheriff, and now I am trying to become the 35th sheriff.
And 2018 was a weird time to get elected because you had to be the man in charge during a really rough time. I mean, protest and COVID. So you had to respond to some things that other sheriffs probably never would have dreamed of responding to. Um,
There
so
was, there was no playbook for a lot of the things we did. We had to make it up.
you did. Not only that, you didn't have a lot of support from people up there in Sacramento.
No, Sacramento, they were tripping over each other to find which bill they could pass that would make the life more difficult for cops, not easier. And
Yeah,
everything was about virtue signaling.
exactly. And for those that don't remember or fail to want to remember, because things sure have changed on the Democrat side, and the things that they seem to want to remember is during that time, it was all of the talk of the town or the talk of the state was defund the police, and that they sure did. So
Yep.
that's another hurdle that you had to fight through, which I hope that we can kind of get into a little bit later. Um, but first, I'd love to talk about the path to becoming sheriff the first time around, because a lot of folks that I've been talking to leading up to today have been wanting to know what that path was for you, because I know you came into law enforcement in '85, but how did you get to become the sheriff?
Well, by the time I retired from the department was 2018. I had already 32 years on, plus my military service. So I was already eligible for almost a full pension. I was a lieutenant at the time, and I was trying to become captain. But the sheriff McDonald in charge, his staff pretty much told me in no uncertain terms, we never want to see you having the rank of captain again, or ever have the rank of captain. So they blocked me from even being able to interview for the different jobs of captains that were opening up, as time passed. And there was one job they forgot to block. That was the sheriff's job. So I went out there and I started. At this time, I was a registered Democrat. I had been since '81 when I first registered to vote. And my idea of a Democrat was John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
So in 2018, they hadn't swallowed the batshit crazy pill yet, and they were still somewhat normal. And that all changed in 2020. But in 2018, I got the endorsement of the party, of the Federation of Labor, of 37 different Democratic clubs. And my platform was real simple: reform, rebuild, restore. And I pushed to get body cameras, on deputies, and transparency, all that good stuff. And so I had a groundwell of support. The establishment absolutely detested the idea of me trying to unseat McDonald, because it hadn't happened in over 100 years that a sheriff was unseated by a challenger. So we broke a whole new ground with this. So, luck would have it, and, the good Lord above and my wife helping and convincing me that we could do it. And we made history in 2018 by shocking the political establishment.
Wow.
However, they did not appreciate that we made history. A month into my job as sheriff, the board hired a law firm to sue me. It's my first month on the job. Kind of put that, frame that and think about how absurd the idea is. They didn't approach me, "Hey, how can we help you?" It was more, "How can we screw you over to make sure you can't be successful?"
Um,
That, the new Democratic Party in 2018, as soon as I took office.
and a month in,
Month in.
they've been preparing that because it takes time to get everything ready for a lawsuit.
Yep. That
Uh,
has it. In fact, when I passed the primary in June of 18, as soon as I got past the primary, at this point I'm still a retired lieutenant. The inspector general, they already started digging into my files to see if they could find anything, any dirt on me, and that was illegal. And we called them on it, and they said, "Oh no, we had permission." No, 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 you didn't. And we had all the paperwork to show it, but the media basically parroted whatever the board said, that, oh, he was just doing his job. How could I be under investigation as a retired lieutenant? Under investigation for what? Unseating the incumbent? Is that a crime? No. That's how absurd it was, in the lengths they went to do it, and then to try to basically cast dispersions on everything I did. It was, how dare you? He's rogue. He doesn't know what he's doing. He resists oversight. They had all this language already prepared.
Language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the language, it's always trickery. They say things so that people within the county start to think, what's going on with this Villanueva guy? He's fishy, huh? Did you see where they already have a lawsuit against him? And
Right.
that's what I see a lot, um, a lot from the Democrat side, right? Well, for the last 10, 15 years, it's all litigation,
Hmm.
and what frustrates me is the lack of work. Why aren't we getting to work for the citizens?
Oh, you nailed it on the head right there. For them, it's all about litigation and resisting actual work. And for them, they view that somehow as progress, because in reality, when it comes to governance, it ain't happening there. These
Right.
people are about opposing things, but whatever they stand for, with a few occasions that you can find them agreeing on something, it's absolutely abominable. Yeah, let boys play in girls' sports. Yeah, you can change your sex, at the flick of a switch. No problem there. Yeah, we can get rid of the police and we'll have everyone sing Kumbaya. We'll send out social workers with clipboards and whistles. Climate coaches. We don't need cops. We have an alternative crisis response model. Of course, taxpayer has to foot everything. But when it comes to actual governance, no, it's
Hang on, I
pretty
gotta
bad.
rewind back there. Can you say that again? You have a what model? A reverse what? You said you have a what model?
Who is that? Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, the words just they didn't come into my head right, and I was like, what does that mean? Um,
well, I was talking about governance, and when it comes to governance, they have no model that works. Everything they do is
oh,
is
right.
is opposed by the vast majority of the population at all levels, at the federal, state, county, city level. These are what they call the 80-20 issues. Yeah, we want voter IDs and secure elections. And what do the Democrats do? File lawsuits, block legislation, do everything possible to prevent what the majority of the people want. It's kind of bizarre.
I have to admit that before you were sheriff, and before 2018, it was not really a position that I would really look into. Like I was never paying attention to who's my local sheriff. I know who my local sheriff is because she signs certain permits, but aside from that, I didn't know who sheriffs were all up and down all up and down the state. Um, but you came in at a very particular time, starting off with some of the protest, uh, and you just happen to be in a hotbed in Los Angeles because, regardless of where it happens, it could be something in Baltimore. You have to deal with the response in the city of Los Angeles because
Yep.
every little thing that happens across the country, there's a riot, or excuse me, there is a protest in Los Angeles. So what is dealing with that like?
Well, it is a pain in the ass in a sense, because, for example, George Floyd, that was Minnesota, like 2,000 miles away. But the activists claim that, oh, there's a Derek Chauvin in every agency, and we're all it's systemic racism. We're into mass incarceration, and we're gonna abolish prisons and jails and free the oppressed. That's their mantra, right? Which, of course, everybody thinks is that's just crazy. But when you think about it, what did he have to do at all with the LA County Sheriff's Department? Nothing. But there you are. They coined a new phrase: mostly peaceful. Gotta
Yeah.
love that. They're throwing bricks. They're breaking up chunks of concrete on the sidewalk, but they'll characterize the violent riots as mostly peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah. Mostly people. Go ahead, Christian.
So, Alex, I mean, boots on the ground. What's the temperature like? Are these riots organized? Is that what you feel?
Absolutely organized. I'll give you a prime example. South LA Station, this was around September of 2020. We had a protest after a deputy involved shooting. So there's people protesting. We had to close down Imperial Highway. We put up the yellow plastic barricades so people wouldn't vandalize South LA Station. And the protesters, we had local gang member approach me as sheriff, and I'm there in front of the station. They say, "Hey, you know what, boss? We're really getting tired of these fools shutting down Imperial Highway. It's really inconvenient for our family and our parents to go to school or get to the doctors and all that. You're going to hear some shots, but take your time going to help." He literally told us that, and I thought, wow, hey, I told him, hey, kid, don't get in any trouble, all right, please.
Right.
We'll try to clear them out as best we can. And a few hours later, we got a call. This, I kid you not, a 911 call from Antifa, the protesters. This guy made good on his threat, but instead of shooting him, they flattened their tires. So Antifa, with the tires flattening their cars, called 911 to the very station they wanted to vandalize.
Yeah.
We ended up arresting like 50 plus of them. Out of the 50 plus, only one cat lived 5 miles from South LA Station. The
Ooh,
rest were out of state. We're talking Massachusetts, Texas, Florida, everywhere but South LA.
you got to be kidding me.
Nope.
Are these people, when you approach them, are they like gullible people, or are they people that just blindly go like just you know pawns pretty much? Is that the kind of attitude that they give off?
These are the activists that are willing to drop everything, basically at the drop of a hat, get on a bus one way to go to protest violently at wherever they're told to go and protest. And they're paid to do this. They don't do this freely. This is not your organic protest that erupts out of some incident or tragedy that happens. For example, the 1965 Watts riots started as a result, I think, of an arrest from a CHP officer, and that kind of sparked it, and it grew from there. But it was all locally generated.
Yeah.
Rodney King kind of was locally generated, but by the second or third day, people with a backpack started showing up on buses from all over the country to join and riot. So they're not your peaceful protesters.
And what's scary is, a couple months ago it got real nasty, and I think it was LA. You know, adults protesting, that's one thing, but then as of late it's been more kids with their activism. And I've been there was plenty of videos where these kids they're striking police officers, and it's like, oh my gosh, I would never. My parents would choke me out for just doing that type of thing. And it's like, you see these schools again across nationwide, where
Mhm.
some of those protesters have some type of power in these public schools, and they're allowing these
Mhm.
children just to leave campus entirely. And then now we got kids on the street, something I saw similar to LA. They're on the street running. They're not listening to the crosswalk, or not obeying civil laws. It gets nasty. It's
Mhm.
scary. And is there a plan for that? What do we do about the kids? How do we ensure their safety? Because I mean, these kids nowadays, I'm a short guy. A good 18-year-old, they're stocky now.
Yeah, they are.
That's, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, those kids, under the idea of mob mentality, in anonymity, they might toss a water bottle from 4 or 5 rows back. That's about the extent. The professional rioters, those are the anarchists dressed all in black. They got their backpack full of rocks, ice, and hammers, you name it. They're going to do the damage. And they have the full face gear, the pads and everything. They want to actually physically confront law enforcement and to create a riot and to vandalize. They have all the tagging gear with them, and well, look what they did in downtown last year in June with the ICE
Yeah.
protest. Prime
Yep.
example.
Yeah.
And
How
There
you
are
got to wonder
focus
how
on.
many Waymos could be ordered up to be burned all in a row
yeah.
before the Waymo people figured out, hey, maybe we shouldn't send any more Waymos over there. I mean, it was getting kind of dumb.
And I think that was where that infamous picture, and I think they ended up finding out what was going on with that, where they were passing out. I think it was it might have been out of a Cybertruck. I don't want to put that smut on Elon, but they were handing out those not N95 masks, but those the ones with
Gas
the
mask.
the canisters and all that.
Yep.
That was crazy. And then you look at the price tag on one of those things at Home Depot, and you're talking $80. And they're just,
Hmm.
you take one, you take one, you take one. So,
Hmm.
oh man,
And then the guy with the Mexican flag on top of the burning Waymo.
That's what I thought about too.
oh
Mm.
no,
Yeah.
primo.
That
Probably ended up.
flag costs like $60, by the way.
Yeah,
No way. The kid's probably from he's probably Chicano, probably born here, more than likely. It's very unlikely that he's actually an immigrant. Um, I as we were talking about these events, what goes through my mind a lot, Alex, is what is it like when you're on the other side, when law enforcement sits down with these guys after they've arrested them, and you guys start to talk to them and find out I mean, first of all, we know where you came from, but do they have records? Why, if they do, why aren't they in prison? Uh, are we putting charges against them? What happens with them? What happens after after they're arrested?
Well, when I was in office, I had the really bad luck. If you thought the pandemic, defunding, and the protests were bad, I had the trifecta of hell of prosecution. I had Gascon was a DA, Bonta was the Attorney General, and the Biden administration was in charge of the federal DOJ. There was no prosecutions were going to happen anywhere unless they had a videotape proof of something like a violent felony. That was about the only thing that was going to get prosecuted. Everything else was just swept away. Like, it's okay. So catch and release, back on the street to protest again, catch him again. We had one cat, Carson Station. He got arrested 3 times for grand theft auto in one day.
What?
Think about that. 3 times in one day.
Oh man, this is embarrassing.
Hmm. But the people in
And,
charge, they pat themselves on the back for bail reform. And that's the monster they created.
I've heard rumors that Kamala was involved a little bit in helping some of these folks get released during those years, up and down the West Coast, Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle. Any experience with that?
That is very true. She publicized a fund, like a GoFundMe account, to actually bail out people who were arrested during riots and protests. Yep, she was part of that.
Wow. So what's it like when you hear people saying we should write her into the governor's ballot?
Oh my God, scary. In fact, when she was in as the vice president, she never ever stepped foot in a sheriff's station or a police department station. She'd come to LA and announce that she was a firm supporter of first responders, quote unquote, as long as they were firemen. She was always at the firehouse. Look how great I am. But she would never ever acknowledge law enforcement.
That's awful.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, your job is to serve and protect, and to have the person that's supposed to be the head law enforcement person in the state not supporting local law enforcement it's beyond embarrassing for the state of California, and we just continue to vote these people in. Like Rob Bonto was appointed to her seat, and he's doing the same thing, if not worse. And he doesn't even step in unless somebody comes from out of state and points out that there's fraud going on in Los Angeles. come on. So I want to get more into um, into what happened during these protests, because I'm aware of how big your county is. I used to live in Los Angeles, so I can only imagine you're having to respond to things going on everywhere, downtown, probably in the valley, probably uh, down in South Central, probably. I mean, how do you deal with it all? And as the man
Well,
in charge,
well, I had my template came from 1992. I was a young deputy in patrol at East LA Station when the Rodney King riots happened. And I remember how Sherman Block and Daryl Gates performed. And their attitude at the onset was, let's just hands off, let's not do anything because we want to stir the pot any further. It's just property damage. Biggest mistake of the 20th century right there with those words. Because what happened is, as they started pulling Reginald Denny out of that truck and beating him with a brick, they telegraphed to the entire world that the police were not going to get involved. And that set off 3 days of riots that ended up with 58 people killed, billions of dollars in property damage, thousands of people injured, all because they weren't aggressive at the front end and said, no, law and order will remain. Huge mistake. So fast forward to 2020. Now I'm in the hot seat.
mm-hmm.
And I remember that I said, this is not going to happen on my watch. It's not going to go the same. So we had two completely equipped sheriff's response teams with all the protection and all the gear to counter the protesters or the rioters. I won't use the term protesters because these people were just straight rioting and looting. We had prepared. We had 3 mobile field forces comprised of officers from other police departments helping us. We called in the National Guard, got them involved. And so when it first broke out, I think it was May 30th of 2020, if I got the date right.
You do.
I went down to the Department Operations Center, which is in the basement of the Hall of Justice, and I said, all right, give me a briefing. What's the situation? And they told me we're monitoring 11 protests that are turning into riots, 11 at the same time. And they're spread out all over the county in different areas. I thought, okay, well, that's an awful lot. And I measured how many we have and said, we don't have enough folks to address all of these at once. So let's call in the National Guard. We got 1,000 of them eventually. And
What do you mean eventually?
well, the first 500 that we ordered up, the mayor of LA, Eric Garcetti, used his connections with the State Department of Office of Emergency Services, Cal OES, and he basically kidnapped my first 500 National Guardsmen to send them over to Bel Air to protect the rich and shameless. So when I find out where's my guardsmen, oh, they're in Bel Air, according to who? Because the sheriff is the one who's in charge of mutual aid for the entire LA County and Orange County, according to the state emergency management plan. So he bypassed me to use his connections to get that. So I called Cal OES and I said, okay, am I not the mutual aid coordinator for this region? And why are my National Guard troops in Bel Air and not responding to our command post? Oh, they apologized profusely, said that was an error, and they rectified it. They sent me another 500. And to their credit, the very next day, I had the 3-star general in charge of Cal OES in my operations center apologizing for that. And he had a second in command with him. He said, that will not happen again. And from that point forward, it worked great. We were able to help LAPD and stop the rioting in Fairfax and the vandalism. Beverly Hills was targeted at the onset because instead of like in 92 where they burned down South LA, their goal was to burn down everything that was capitalism, money. So they went after Beverly Hills. They went after the Citadel and Commerce. They went after the Promenade, the Santa Monica, Fairfax district. See kind of what they were targeting?
Yeah.
And they succeeded in the Promenade only because Santa Monica chief of police decided to do what Block and Gates did in 92. Let's not do anything. It's just property. And they destroyed the Promenade. We went there to help them. We got there. The place was already in shambles. And I said, okay, we're not going to waste time here because they had already screwed up. Let's go to Long Beach, and we'll help out because Long Beach was just starting. Get to Long Beach, chief of police, a guy named Robert Luna. You may know who he is.
Hmm.
He's in hiding, can't be found. Apparently, he was hiding in the bunker house of the fire station of Long Beach PD. So he left his troops on their own. We met up with them, met up with the sergeant. I asked him, "Hey, where's your chief?" He said, "Well, I don't know, but I got an email from him." That was literally Chief Luna. And I said, "Okay, well, come with us." So we went down to 7th and Pine. They were looting a CVS pharmacy. We stopped the looting. We chased down the looters. I even hobbled best I could, caught a couple myself, handcuffed everybody. And once word got out that we were there and we were taking names, all of a sudden they all disappeared. And that ended that. So, of all the 3,000 plus square miles of sheriff's territory, there was no rioting, there was no looting. It was only in the places where you had weak leadership that it started, and they succeeded in Long Beach to a certain degree. Definitely Santa Monica, they had their way. Fairfax, they had their way until we got involved and helped LAPD with that mess. But it was a big eye opener, and the deputies on the ground, I gave them marching orders. If your radio car gets destroyed, burned, or vandalized, uh, you're going to walk back to the station. LAPD lost 56 radio cars.
Wow.
We lost none.
Mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful. Yeah, right.
mostly,
Mostly peaceful.
mostly peaceful.
Hmm.
Wow. Uh, what do you know the numbers, just off the top? The number of officers or deputies between the uh, county sheriff's office, LAPD, um, and probably even the National Guard. Because in my head, you said 1,000 guardsmen, but is that aside from the 500 that were kidnapped and sent to uh, is it Bel Air?
That was 500 plus 500, total of 1,000.
Okay. Oh, so you got the 500 back eventually.
Yes, we had, and it worked good because we figured we could position National Guard to cover fixed assets like public buildings that they wanted to vandalize, and that
Yeah.
would free up the deputies to hit the road to start doing, the police work, catching the bad guys. So that worked out great. But in April of 2020, we hit the 10,000 mark of sworn on the sheriff's department. LAPD was somewhat smaller, around 9,500 or so, but we had enough personnel to be able to continue manning all the patrol stations, the patrol divisions, handling 911, doing all that stuff, and still have enough bodies to send out there and do the hard work of suppressing a riot, which is what we're supposed to do, actually by law. That's literally one of the job descriptions of sheriff: suppress riots. And today, the sheriff has lost somewhere 3,000 sworn. LAPD is down almost 2,000. So that's between the two, almost 5,000 are gone from that
Wow.
formula of 2020. How both agencies have collapsed in a span of a short 6 years.
And the city's growing.
Yeah, crime doesn't stop.
Crime doesn't
No.
stop. I thought it was. I thought even then it was. You guys were understaffed.
And,
Right
and
now, right now, the sheriff's department is the most understaffed agency in the entire nation, and it's not even close to number two. That's
so
how bad it is.
so Alex, what does that do to the mind? What kind of pressures, are on, the force that, where do you guys go for help? Cuz I mean, this is I imagine a major city like that, where the effects, yeah, and are there effects now that you're seeing from
Oh,
those instances?
there's major effects. The sheriff's department is supposed to be the 911 system for police departments. When something happens that's too big for your agency to handle, you call the sheriffs, and the sheriffs show up and they help you out. That's how it's mutual aid is
That
designed to be.
sounds so cool. The sheriffs
However,
show up.
but when you don't have a sheriff to show up, then what? Now it's really getting bad because now you're going to have to wait for the highway patrol to eventually show up if they can, and they're going to be short-staffed as well. So everybody's running short. But within the department itself, the shortage of deputies means everyone who's working the street is working a skeleton crew. You're doing back-to-back double shifts forced. You don't get to go home. Your days off get canceled. So every time you have to do law enforcement activity, you're constantly thinking, man, if this goes sideways, do I have anybody who can back me up? Or maybe they're not going to pull over that carload of gangsters knowing that there's no one to back them up. Because the only two other cars that were available, one is booking someone in the jail, another one's sitting on a body in the hospital, and you're it on the street. So maybe you don't make those decisions. And that car that you did not stop is a car that, later on that night goes and shoots up your house or breaks in. And that is the choices that deputies are making right now in the field because they have such a gross lack of personnel.
That is terrible. And completely different city in California. It just makes me think about the law enforcement in Oakland, California, where the report came out there was actually only like 30 officers out in the city. And I just think like, man, what is going on in California from the top down where our law enforcement is being thinned out and crime is still happening in the state. And they swear it's not. They swear it's going down. And the reporting gets different every year. The types of crimes that they adjust so that the crime rates look like they're improving. I don't understand it.
Non-reported issues as well.
When you know what? Corporate America is telling their retail outlets, unless someone gets injured, do not report theft. Which means you can go do a robbery of a convenience store with a gun and walk out and won't even generate a report, which means the robbery never happened in the eyes of the political establishment because that robbery didn't get counted. Another one is how they count crime. Prior to 2014 and Prop 47, if you had 100 kids loot a store, that was 100 acts of looting. Now it constitutes one act of looting, but you have 100 suspects. So you see how you can play with statistics and make it read whatever you want. And then they recategorize crimes. What used to be a burglary is now a simple misdemeanor. It used to be a felony before. Felony possession of drugs, all these things are now
Nonviolent crime.
Yep.
And they say that every time. I see that in our comments when we talk about these things, and they go, "Well, it's not really a serious crime; it's just a misdemeanor." And I think in my head like, "Whoa, wait a minute! I remember when I was a kid, misdemeanor, you're sitting in prison. Like, what do you mean it's not really a crime? It just doesn't make sense to me, Alex."
No, again, this is all part of ideology. When you have one party rule, they're able to basically implement that extremist ideology that says that arresting people is racist and it's an act of mass incarceration, and they want to free the hostages. They want to close prisons, close jails. The abolitionist movement, they have fancy slogans. They say you can't get well in a cell. So it's a decarceration mindset, and it goes hand in hand with part of the defunding. But what they do want to do with the money is they want to create more nonprofits and make sure the money goes to them.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was just watching a video, Foo's Gone Wild. No, one of these Foo's, the guy with the mask, and he was talking with Tom Steyer, who apparently was involved in setting up prisons a little over 20 years ago. But I guess 20 years ago he had a change of heart and started.
You know what? Let me hold you right to just what you said right there. You fell for a Tom Steyer commercial.
Oh,
You
Gio,
fell for it.
are you watching HBO again?
I'm just saying what the video said.
Gio.
Busted. Here's why you really gotta pay attention to what they say.
Yeah.
He invested into private prisons 20 years ago,
Right.
and then he sold them. What he's not telling you is when did he sell them. He didn't have a change of heart 20 years ago. He had a change of heart like 20 months ago. when he wanted to run for governor. See, you got to read between the fine lines there, because he
You
kind of
did it again,
glosses over it.
Steyer.
Nope, you got stired.
Oh
You got
man.
Steyer, Gio.
He didn't get it. He didn't do the hey Tommy. Yeah, yeah. Wow. No, I almost just skipped over the commercial, and I was like, I don't know. Let me see what these guys have to like. Why is he even with the foo? Um, I just thought they were comedians, but yeah, I watched the commercial and I just thought to myself like, who's falling for who thinks that these NGO nonprofits are helping rehabilitate people?
They're
Um,
not.
yeah, I
They're helping themselves in their bank accounts. That's for sure.
yes, yeah, it's all about the money.
Mm-hmm.
Who's getting rich on this?
The problems that they're there to fix are only getting worse, but their pockets are getting,
Bigger.
yeah.
They've incentivized decay,
Yep.
because they get paid by how many people they treat, how many people, whatever that they're doing. And typically, you're going to have a fat cat CEO
Yeah.
making a high six-figure salary, and they're going to pay some poor kid $20 an hour to hand out water bottles and croissant, and they'll call that outreach. That's how the game is played.
Oh man, this is it's a little eye opening, and it makes me curious because I was thinking about something earlier, and I think this can help me lead into something different. Um, my son was asking me the other day. He goes, "Dad, why do we have police, sheriff, and CHP? Like, what is the difference? Because we see them everywhere. Every city we go to has local police and a local sheriff and CHP, and they all pull you over. Not me; they don't pull me over, but he always sees he always sees people pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to explain it to him, but of course in my head I'm like, I don't really know. I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna
Well,
ask Alex Villanueva.
let me give you a basic tutorial. Every independent city typically has their own police department. LA County has 88 municipalities. 88 cities have their own mayor, city council, city manager. 42 of the 88 don't have a police department because they contracted with the sheriff's department for basic police services. And then what's not within one of the 88 cities is called unincorporated county area. That one falls under the jurisdiction of the sheriff's department to provide basic services. And you'll have places like East LA, Lenox, in down South LA, you're going to have Century Station. All these places are unincorporated communities, Del Aire, Wiseburn. You have unincorporated areas in San Dimas, up in the high desert, Leona Valley, and Acton. All these places are unincorporated communities. Sheriff's Department is their primary provider. Highway patrol is relegated to the freeways and the major highways. And also, for anything that's traffic related in an unincorporated community, it goes to the highway patrol. So
Okay.
all of them have police powers. All of them can pull you over. They can arrest you. They can enforce all the laws of the state of California. So you can't get away from one by running into another person's jurisdiction, because they go with you.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
um, is there a state police?
There's also state police. The state police, they're relegated to providing security to buildings, to the Capitol building, for example. You also have the University of California and the California State Police that
Mhm.
govern the universities and the campuses of the state system. And you have state parks that have state rangers, for example, in them. And state property has state police for that purpose, but they're very much narrow and focused. But the ones that have the full services is going to be your sheriff's department and your police departments. They
Okay.
have all the services. And so when a crime happens, like a homicide, for example, homicide is a specialized area of investigation that not too many agencies can handle on their own. So for the sheriff's department, we do all the sheriff's territory, plus of the 46 cities that have their own police department. 40 of them contract with the sheriff's department for homicides, and 6 of them have their own homicide detectives, like LAPD, Long Beach, I think Pasadena, Beverly Hills, more or less.
I'm glad I asked the question because, in you answering that question, you just explained how much area is that you have to cover between so little agencies, so few officers, um, which makes me think about some of the things that I would imagine you guys have to deal with. I mean, obviously the homeless stuff, annoying. I get that. Because I see it out in the streets. But the stuff that people don't talk about, the homicide, the trafficking, the drug trafficking, the human trafficking,
Hmm.
how do the officers deal with stuff like that?
Well, when the department is fully staffed, you have the resource to actually enforce the law. For example, on human trafficking, we used to do stings, reverse stings, with red light districts, and we'd round up the ones that are engaged as sex workers, and we put in deputies working undercover as sex workers, and they'd basically get the Johns, and they'd make arrest of the Johns, the clients, and we'd end up rescuing a lot of people that were being human trafficked to being forced into sex work, minors. I mean, it's a very ugly business that Sacramento made easier by actually getting rid of certain laws that we used to use to enforce red light districts. So there's a lot in play here.
That's an interesting comment about Sacramento
Hmm.
changing some of the laws. You want to get into that? Because we're seeing so much attention on this this year because of the obviously with Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton pushing so much from the Republican side. It almost seems like the Republicans are the ones that are calling this out because the Democrats are kind of just go along with the flow because they just want to keep power. But like Steve Hilton, I know David Serpa, he was up on Figueroa, and they were looking into what's going on out there. And I'm curious, what are those changes that came from Sacramento that made it worse?
Well, I'll give you a prime example. There used to be a crime called loitering with intent to commit prostitution. So if you hung around a red light district and you were engaged in talking in the vehicles, dressing scantily, there was a lot of laws, that law in particular, they could use as a misdemeanor to arrest sex workers and pimping, pandering, all these laws. But when they passed a law in Sacramento that made that legal to loiter with intent to commit prostitution. And the claim of the people that pushed for the law saying that law enforcement was targeting people of color. Well, which is absolute nonsense because law enforcement has no control over who commits crime. They have to address the crime itself. So the legislature passed it. I think this is one of those Scott Wiener specials. And the governor signed it into law, and he was warned, you sign this into law, the number of red light districts is going to explode, and you're going to see human trafficking explode across the state. He signed it anyway, and that's exactly what happened. That's why you're seeing red light districts today that you never used to see before. You're wondering, where did all these people come from? Well, they came from Sacramento, courtesy of Sacramento.
Why? What, Christian? Why is Scott Wiener's name always on these things?
It's always that guy. They say follow the money, follow whatever, whatever
What's
that
he
guy's
into,
doing.
man? What's he into?
Check his laptops.
I think so.
I would, you know, we're laughing, but I kind of think we should check his laptops.
Yeah, he's a little scary dude.
Sorry, Alex, I don't want to get you involved in with any trouble.
No, that's us. That's
Yeah.
us.
Allegations from Gio and Christian. Um, so obviously you described how it should work when you guys are fully staffed. What is it really like? Because I know you guys are not fully staffed. I know, especially today. I'm sure you see or you hear rumors about things that are going on because I hear them. I mean, we have friends of the podcast. I know folks in the community that they're telling me horror stories.
Hmm.
I mean,
Well, I can
people
tell you
falling
this.
asleep on the way home.
We had a deputy who fell asleep on the way home. It happened just last month in March. Fell asleep at the wheel on the 10 freeway in Crenshaw after working back-to-back double shifts and got into an accident. And someone else in that accident, it was 5 vehicles involved, ended up dying. Another deputy in Santa Clarita fell asleep at the wheel in a solo traffic collision, rolled over, he died. So this is becoming tragic and frequent, and it is all preventable.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's preventable. E- Double shifts. I mean, how many hours is that?
That's 16 hours on, 8 hours off, 16 hours on, 8 hours off. And this is a job that you have to have your head on a swivel. You have to be able to understand, interpret, react to things that are happening, and then be able to actually engage in documenting articulately what you're seeing and doing, collecting evidence. And the 8 hours off, that includes the commute home and back to work.
Yeah.
Lord knows how far away they're driving. So you might get 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of quality sleep, and you're back on the grind again.
And how do you maintain a relationship, right, with somebody? Whether you're already married to them or you're working out something, there's not enough time shared,
Nope.
you know?
Nope. Right on the money. All of those conflicts of relationships, kids growing up without parents, it never gets resolved. It keeps festering, getting bigger and bigger because the absence of one of the parents.
Holy moly! You know, you said something there that for the folks that are not in the Los Angeles area, when you mention those 8 hours that you get to sleep or go home and sleep, or some of these guys, I knew a deputy that worked the Pacific Coast Highway and lived in Valencia.
Hmm.
I mean, if there's traffic, you're lucky to be home within an hour and a half,
Yep, that's a
and then going to
that's the
work.
pro- hmm
So
yeah.
like, you're what sleep in if you want to spend time with your kids, you're sleeping what 4 or 5 hours, and then you have to go back to
Yeah.
work for a 16-hour shift.
Hmm.
Holy moly!
And they're not going to be able to afford living in Malibu on a deputy salary. We know that.
No, no, and God forbid your home burns down because the mayor. I better not say it because I you will be close with the mayor if if you're the sheriff again. Um, Hopefully it's not Bass. It's my opinion, not yours.
Mhm.
Um, so speaking of, um, with everything that happened in the last couple of years, is it a surprise to you that Bass is still in this race for mayor?
Well, she's in the race, but she's not doing very well. I think there's a groundswell of opposition to failed politicians. I think the same thing is happening with Sheriff Luna. People are starting to realize, wow, we put people in office that don't know what they're doing. Bad things happen.
Right.
And we've seen it from both entities. Very similar failures from both entities.
Now, your county. Um, I hate to say it because I used to live in your county, and I remember what it was like voting as a conservative in your county. Um, it's not very conservative. So after the whole BLM situation, we didn't even talk about COVID, but
Mm-mm.
after that whole situation, you ran for reelection,
Hmm.
and I'm sure everything was against you.
Everything was working against me. We had George Soros, Jeff Katzenberg, billionaires throwing money at Luna in the primary, something that never ever happened before. It was all the first for him. The media looked the other way. The guy failed miserably in Long Beach as the chief of police. His entire workforce hated his guts, but there they were singing his virtues like he was the best thing since sliced bread. Never even bothered looking at his failures in Long Beach. And what does he do in LA? He just fails on a bigger stage,
Yeah.
literally, with a lot more at stake. And I mean, his performance during the fires alone is just atrocious, led directly to the death of the 19 people in Altadena.
I agree. I'm curious, and this might lead into COVID a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of the voter response was because of your responses during COVID.
Yeah, because they wanted me to fire 4,000 employees because they refused to take the jab. Well, my position was I'm not going to enforce a medical treatment on my employees. That's their personal decision. So I gave them the option. You can take the jab or you get tested every week. And
Oh, that seems reasonable.
everyone opted for either one. But here's the weird thing. It was the same policy of the president, the same policy of the governor, but the board never denounced the president or the governor, only me.
Oh,
See? Double standard.
I just don't understand, Alex, because as sheriffs, deputies, they're out there during the COVID crisis working among the people. They're around the virus for months before there's even a vaccine.
Yes, in fact, they stuck their neck out saving people. And at one point, I had 1,000 employees in quarantine. But thankfully, we had enough personnel to be able to manage having 1,000 people in quarantine at the same time. But yeah, the same people never appreciated the deputies sticking their neck out when there was no vaccine. And as soon as there was a vaccine, they all got high religion, all of a sudden decided the deputies were exposing the public to unnecessary danger. But we got the results of the positivity rates. This is going to get you kind of angry. So I hope you're seated down for this one.
I'm seated.
I had 10,000 vaccinated employees. I had over 6,000 unvaccinated employees. I knew the positivity rate of both populations. For the unvaccinated, it was 3.9%. For the vaccinated, it was 3.4%. So for the difference of 0.5%, they were willing to jeopardize public safety.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Optics.
0.5%. It turns out the vaccine for the COVID was not a true vaccine at all. It served as a therapy for people who might have been exposed to the bigger symptoms, the more lethal symptoms, especially if you're predisposed. But you could get the vaccine and still get COVID, almost the same as if you
Yeah.
didn't have the vaccine and get
Mm-hmm.
COVID. Big difference, because when you got the polio vaccine, you didn't get polio, no matter what.
Yeah.
Same thing with smallpox and measles. All these ones, they were almost eradicated worldwide, were true vaccines. The COVID was not a true vaccine.
Yeah. And that came out early. The efficacy rate came out very early. And I want to say by the time your election came in 22, we already knew that, didn't we?
What the CDC did and Barbara Ferrer from the Department of Public Health is they concealed the difference between the two. So you could never really go. They play like a shell game with numbers, but you would never know that because I had two large populations to compare to, set in the same circumstances. So I could compare apples to apples. And that information was very devastating against the vaccine mandate, but they suppressed that because it didn't help their argument.
Oh man. So so they want to force these vaccines that didn't end up working. And before that even happened, they wanted you to go around shutting down businesses. They wanted you
Mm-hmm.
to, um, if you weren't essential, you had to be at home. Right? What is that like as a deputy?
Well, imagine the whole thing about being essential. Who gets to decide what's essential? Every single employee's job is essential so they can keep basically put food on the table for their family. That's essential.
Yeah, to me that's essential.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something to be aware of.
So, Alex, um, I would like to give you the opportunity to be able to talk to your constituents that will be voting for you. Remind them who you are and why they should go out and vote for you, or if they're going to fill out ballots out at home, why should they choose Alex Villanueva again? I mean, because a lot of these folks have short-term memories. Some of them are willing to vote for Bass again, so they have short-term memories. You got to remind them because the ballots just hit home.
Ouch. Well, with that, one, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to speak to voters directly. And I'll tell you this, I took office in 2018. I left office in 2022, and you were safer in 2022 than you are today in 2026. Everything I did made the department stronger, safer, more transparent, and more accountable, not only to the community, but accountable to maintain the high standards of the Sheriff's Department. The person in office now has lowered standards for hiring personnel. He's lost about 30% of the workforce is gone. He can't hire. Heck, he can't bring ends to a picnic. That's how bad the situation is right now. And everyone's safety is in jeopardy because there's just not enough personnel to even man the phone lines and answer 911 and get a deputy out there when their life is on the line. The jails are grossly understaffed. They're riding with a skeleton crew. And there's a lot of lives are at stake here. So this is a serious race, and this is not a partisan race. You don't call 911 and ask for a Republican deputy or a Democrat deputy. You ask for a deputy. And
Right.
they're not going to ask you, are you a Republican or Democrat household? Public safety transcends politics. And this isn't about red or blue. It's about right or wrong. And Lord willing, I have the opportunity to get back in the saddle as sheriff. The workload that is going to be taken, it's going to take to get the department back to full staffing. It's going to be a tough call to make the department ready for the 2028 Olympics. Right now, it's an impossibility. Luna is a direct threat to public safety, and the department will not exist 4 more years under Luna. So everyone needs to start thinking for your own family safety in this race. So it means a lot.
Well, I for one agree. So you for all our listeners, you can make your own decision, but you got to look at the history, right? You got to see what did Villanueva do, what did Luna do, right? And don't let the letter next to the name trick you. Is a stupid thing to look at the letter next to the name.
There's no letters next to the name. It's a
There you
nonpartisan office.
it,
But I'll tell you something else. If you have the time, go read an endorsement, a comment from the LA Times or any of the local rags that were saying, let's endorse Luna for sheriff. Read it and ask yourself, did that have anything to do with public safety? And you realize we got duped.
yeah.
This is
We
about
got
public
stired.
safety. Yep, you got stired.
And that happens a lot. I as somebody who's doing this every day, looking up, doing research, a lot of people get duped over emotional things that whoever you're voting for probably has no control over, even if they really wanted to. So, really think about the things that are factors in why you're voting for somebody. Because if you are really out there um, making informed decisions, which is important as a voter, you want to make an informed decision because it does affect you. You might not think that whoever is voted in as sheriff doesn't affect you, but when you need law enforcement to come to your house because somebody's acting a fool or you have an emergency situation, you want the right person at the top making the calls. So please get informed. And Alex Villanueva, I really appreciate you coming on today. How can they find you?
Well, my website for the campaign is alexvillanueva2026.com. You can donate, you can volunteer, you can leave an endorsement and stay informed with the campaign on that website. You can get me on social media, Sheriff Villanueva 33 on Facebook and Instagram. On X, you can find me at Alex Villanueva with 1L 33 on Instagram. And turns out when I left office in 22, all the activists tried every variation of my name to block me from having a Twitter handle. So it took us about 2 hours to find one. So they were busy.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, Alex, and Los Angeles. Do your research. This is a good guy right here. If
Thank
in
you.
case you don't
Appreciate that.
remember. Thank you all for tuning in.